I am the ghost of Christmas Classic, and I will be talking about It's a Wonderful Life.
I am the ghost of Christmas childhood, and I will be talking about Home Alone.
And I am the ghost of Christmas Not, and I will be talking about Die Hard. Hello, and welcome to Ignore the Bell. My name is Nathan.
I'm Tyler.
And I'm Luke.
And if you did not catch that, this is the very first Christmas edition of the podcast. And perhaps this is going to become a tradition where we end up talking about different aspects of Christmas movies around this time of year. But we figured since most people are thinking about Christmas at this time of year, because it is that time of year, then why not do a special holiday themed podcast? So we're going to be talking about It's a Wonderful Life, Home Alone, and Die Hard. 3 Christmas movies, or are they? We'll get into that actual discussion. We do have a sponsor for today's episode. So, Tyler, you've got the ad read for today.
Yes. So our sponsor for today is Indoor Toboggans. Staircases are sold separately, but they will have you saying, ho, ho, hold on tight. Pick yours up today.
I'm so glad you didn't tell us what that was beforehand. That slogan is pretty incredible. All right, folks. Well, I hope you enjoy the podcast as much as you enjoyed that ad read.
Oh man, I wish this discussion could go on forever.
Ignore the bell. We're gonna keep going, people.
All right, we've set the timer for a shorter amount of time for today. So we've set it for 30 minutes because we really want to just discuss the Christmas aspect of these. We are going to go in that order. So we're going to start with Luke. He's going to be representing Christmas classics. So you're going to be talking about It's a Wonderful Life, because the way we basically approach this is we said, what is your favorite movie to watch at this time of year? Right? That's basically how we've approached the discussion. And then you chose a very classic one with It's a Wonderful Life. Tyler, you chose a more modern classic with Home Alone. And I chose the more controversial classic, Die Hard. And that's pretty representative of what what gets us in the holiday spirit. So, all right. So, Luke, what do you like about It's a Wonderful Life?
I love the feeling because it feels the most Christmas to me, even though I'm not much of a Christmas kind of guy, but it really feels like Christmas. And I just love what it's trying to say, and kind of how it feels, how it feels, what it's trying to say, and more so what the main messages are. And that's what I find the most enjoyable about the movie.
Okay, so I was recently reading an article, I think I was reading an article about whether Die Hard is a Christmas movie. And then what ended up coming out of this is it talked about the ultimate Christmas film of It's a Wonderful Life was an accidental Christmas movie, that it was not really intended, it was not really written as a Christmas movie. But what ended up happening is, I guess there was some kind of error in them protecting the theatrical or the television rights to the film. So it ended up going into the public domain in the mid 1980s, even though most films from this era had not gone into the public domain, because public domain is like anybody can show it without having to pay the people who hold the license to the television rights. So it's just, you don't have to pay for it. You can just put it on television. All these different channels can put it on television, and you can do it essentially. It's like free content, and it's a classic film with Jimmy Stewart. So this happened in the mid 1980s, as in before the mid 1980s. People didn't think about It's a Wonderful Life and Christmas. They didn't think about those two things being paired together. And even within the film, it's not like, as I was reading, it's not exactly that this was intended to be the ultimate Christmas story, right? Like something like Dickens, A Christmas Story is very much a Christmas story. But It's a Wonderful Life was not focused on that, but it ended up becoming so heavily associated with it because for the last 30 plus years, it has just aired incessantly on television around
Mhm.
Christmas time because, of course, networks figured out, well, people will watch it because it around this time of year. And anything to do with Christmas, then people have all of this nostalgia, right? That if you saw this at whatever age around that certain time of year where you're not working, you're not in school, and family is, coming together, you're having nice meals and treats and
Mhm.
presents and all of that, then you get all that warm and fuzzy feeling with whatever's associated with that.
Hmm.
And so I think that's where It's a Wonderful Life ends up working its way into the hearts and minds of many people around this time of year. But it's kind of funny that it was a little bit accidental.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, because I mean, the story is, about a man going to commit suicide and
Mhm.
then having an angel appear to him and basically do all these flashbacks of different times in his life, and him realizing that it is better to be alive. It just so
Yeah.
happens that he was going to kill himself on Christmas, and so when he
Mhm.
returns to his family, then, there's the Christmas tree and a bell on the tree rings, and then every time a bell rings, an angel gets its wings.
Yeah.
So that's about like as much into Christmas as it gets, though, is just that
Mhm.
final scene.
Mhm.
Right. Right. Now,
Yeah.
yeah, and there's a couple things with that you guys, because and this is going to be, people can attack me for this, but I have not seen It's a Wonderful Life. I'm very familiar with the story, but I have not actually seen the film. But you guys are doing a good job of convincing me of this being, more holiday themed than I thought, because what could be more Christmassy than suicide? Um, and I mean, unfortunately, this is true that at this time of year, when so many people associate, family gatherings and these lovely meals and work parties and presents and, Christmas morning and all of that stuff, you unfortunately do get this big spike of people who do take their own life. And so, maybe like, and I think that there is obviously depth and resonance to the film where it is exploring that pretty, like, well, not pretty, like that very dark theme of, somebody who is considering, contemplating taking their own life, and doing that at Christmas time, and then seeing the value of human life. That is a,
Mhm.
a great message.
Yeah.
um the other thing too, that, like, I've wondered, because then you end up like, it's such a, this is partially where I have issues with Christmas films, is that what we like, Hollywood in so many ways has determined what we associate with Christmas. And I don't like that
Mhm.
because it feels so manipulative. It,
Mhm.
it doesn't feel genuine or organic. It's like, where did you get that family tradition from? Hollywood, right? And
Mhm.
I'm like, is that where your family tradition should be coming from? From a screenwriter or some producer in Hollywood who then says, and now your family will now start doing this for decades and decades, and it'll go pass from generation to generation. And to
Mhm.
just say, like, because it's kind of like when you trace it back, even with like Santa Claus, then you say, like, well, what's the history of Santa Claus? And it's like, well, Coca-Cola really
Yeah.
popularized the contemporary image of Santa Claus, even though there was already that figure, but it wasn't this, it didn't have those um, identifiable characteristics. Santa Claus kind of was not, didn't always have the exact same appearance with the colors and all of that, because
Mhm.
Santa Claus has got Coca-Cola colors of the red and the white and all of that stuff. And there's this whole interesting history behind it. So like that line of every time, what is it? Every time a bell rings, an
Um,
angel gets, is
Gets
that it?
swings. Yeah.
Gets its wings, which, like, to me, so like one reason why I don't like, and this is one reason why I have not watched It's Wonderful Life as a Christmas film, is I'm like, well, for one thing, that's theological nonsense.
Right.
There's
Mhm.
nothing like in scripture that indicates that there's new angels all the time, or there's a bunch of angels who are,
Yeah.
like tethered to the ground because they don't have wings and they're just desperate for some a-hole on earth to ring a bell around Christmas time. And then it's like, I can fly. Or what if you
Yeah.
get some jerk kid who just rings and rings and rings, and then it's like, we have no more new angels, so they just keep sprouting new wings, and they're like, stop, because they're just sprouting all over like tumors or whatever. But like, so many people look at that and they're like, oh, and then they end up associating it with, like, it's become like this canonical concept like this canonical tradition in Christmas of, that people associate now bells with Christmas and with this idea that it's somehow tied into Christian theology. But it's just, to me, it's a throwaway line from
Yeah.
a Hollywood film. So I'm going, to me, it doesn't count as a Christmas movie because it, like, I mean, it does, but it's like a secularized version or a paganized version of Christmas.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, no, that is a good point. It is interesting at the beginning of the film, and Luke, maybe you can speak to this a little bit more. Is it because the angel who eventually ends up helping Jimmy Stewart's character is talking to? Is it God that he's supposed to be talking to? Um,
I can't remember, but I think so because it's been a while since I've seen it, but I think so.
Yeah, and God is essentially assigning this angel to Jimmy Stewart's character.
Hmm.
And I don't know that, an angel gets his wings is necessarily supposed to be um, like a literal
Okay.
thing, but
Yeah.
rather, like, oh, he earned his wings, like
Mhm.
he's I think that that's how it was like intended, but it's a little girl who says every time a bell rings, an angel gets its wings.
Which then gets
Um,
confirmed by Jimmy Stewart. That's right. That's right.
right.
That's exactly how it works.
Yeah. Um, yeah. So it is interesting because I think that Jimmy Stewart is essentially saying like, yeah, good job, angel who helped me. I don't remember the angel's name.
Yeah, I can't remember either.
Yeah.
But
But
Like,
yeah, and the other idea is that like the bell rang without any
okay.
outside
Okay,
force.
I see.
Mhm.
I see. So
So
when you hear a bell ringing, then
yes,
that's
yeah,
what it means. Yeah, and it's
Mhm.
attaboy angel or attagirl angel.
yeah.
But okay, so I'm not trying to like, genuinely, I'm not trying to criticize the film. That And people can have whatever they want for their own Christmas traditions, right?
Mhm.
Whether it is a secularized version of Christmas and it really doesn't have to do with the, like, literal definition, which is Christ Mass, right?
Mhm.
Which
Right.
is like going to church to celebrate Christ,
Yeah.
right? Having Mass where we all come together. So I'm saying, like, a lot of what we associate with Christmas and Christmas movies really doesn't have to do with what the term actually means.
Mhm.
That it's come to mean something very different and something, I think, very secular. And like I say, taking a lot of pagan traditions, which is not an original, like, concept by me. Like,
Mhm.
this is well known that they're, like, most of Christmas traditions are um, iterations of pagan traditions around this time
Yeah.
of year, which,
Mhm.
whatever, like, if that's your thing and if you don't care about the history behind that, then that's fine. And if you don't care if it's, properly theological or not, then that's fine too. I guess what I'm trying to say is, when we associate It's a Wonderful Life as being one of the ultimate Christmas films, then I'm saying, what actually defines a Christmas film? Because this is
Mhm.
me laying the groundwork for saying that Die Hard is totally a Christmas film. This is
Yeah.
essentially what I'm trying to do. I'm saying that even the Christmas films, they don't fit into Christian theology anyway.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
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 No, absolutely.
Mhm.
All right, should we move on then?
Yeah.
Yeah, so my film, Home Alone, holiday classic. It came out in 1990, I believe. And yeah, so before I was born even. But yeah, it is. I enjoy watching it, and I do not enjoy Christmas in general.
I know we're like
Uh,
a bunch of Grinches on this podcast. So
yeah.
if, like, you were hoping for this highly sentimental version of, like, a Christmas podcast, you're not going to get it here.
Yeah, no. Yeah, so what I really enjoy about Home Alone, there's honestly one scene in particular which stands out amongst the rest, which is when Kevin, the kid who is home alone, then he goes to the church and there's the old man who lives next door to him, who happens to also be there. And the whole movie then this old man has kind of been looking at Kevin like a little funny, and Kevin has been very, very scared of this man, partly because of the rumors and stories and all that his brother and other relatives have told him
Mhm.
about this figure. And so the old man comes over, and he's like, mind if I sit down? Yeah, and Kevin does allow him to, and then they have like this really nice conversation um, about how it's really fascinating because the old man says, "Did you like this is the place to come if you did something wrong?" And Kevin goes, "Oh, is it?" And he and the old man goes, "I think so." So then what did you do wrong? Oh, well, my son and I had a fight, all these years ago, and we haven't spoken since. Um, and of course, that's what started off the whole film of Home Alone is Kevin being upset at his family and his family being upset at him, and them just having this huge fight, and then him being sent to the attic by himself overnight.
Mhm.
And so then Kevin is kind of like, like you should call your son. And he's like, oh well, like I'm scared that he won't talk to me. And it's like, well, you'll never know if you don't actually try that. And so that is the moment that stands out to me the most, and then it does come back at the end when after Kevin's family has returned and he finds out that they were all trying desperately to get back to him this whole time. Then he looks out the window and he sees his neighbor hugging his granddaughter and is there with his son and his son's wife, and they're all together. And it's just this nice moment of like Kevin having had that effect of bringing that family togetherness back to him.
Absolutely. I mean, it is. Um, I'm surprised at. I think there's less resistance to Home Alone as being one of the greatest Christmas movies now. But I know for a long time, like especially like as a kid, I remember people pushed back against that, like in the 90s, the idea that Home Alone was just as good as A Christmas Story or It's a Wonderful Life, and
Or Christmas Carol.
yeah, A Christmas Carol. Yeah, that's what I was thinking of, is A Christmas Carol with Dickens, and yeah, and It's a Wonderful Life, and amongst others, that people were like, no, it's not it's not even close to the same level of Christmasness or
Right.
quality, and obviously that's kind of how things tend to work anyway, whether it is as good or not. It's just that as people age up, then you get more and more people who've seen it from a young
Yeah.
age who then defend it as being a Christmas film.
Mhm.
But I think even aside from that, you look at it on its surface and you say it is an idealized version of Christmas and the that time of year, of the importance of family, because certainly for
Mhm.
most people that's what Christmas is more than anything else, more than it being Christ's Mass. It's about family. And so I think
Yeah.
Mhm.
that Home Alone does such a good job of that, of showing that even if you don't have a perfect family, even if your Christmas itself doesn't go perfectly, the
Mhm.
important thing though is being together. And most families have this attitude of like the greatest tragedy at Christmas time is people not being together, is your family not
Yeah.
being together. That is
Mhm.
somehow the biggest tragedy of Christmas. It's not, oh no, we've got this relative who hates Jesus and doesn't want to go to church. And do you know what I mean? Like that
Yeah.
Yeah.
person's caught up in whatever like habitual sin. It's none of that stuff. It's just
Mhm.
doesn't matter. Um, your spiritual self, that doesn't matter at all at Christmas time. It's just, are you in the same room as family members? And if you're in the
Yeah.
same room as family members, perfect. That's great. And if you're not in the same room as family members, it's like, oh, I'm going to go and do like missions work overseas. But it's Christmas. You need to be here, right? Like Home Alone to me represents that so well, of
Yeah.
lifting up this idea of the immediate family as being what the season is all about. Um,
Mhm.
which I think is like, it's fair, even if that's not right. That's what it's become for most families.
Yes. Yeah.
Mhm.
And Yeah, and the film even says as much during that conversation between Kevin and the old man, where where one of them, I think it's the old man who says like, yeah, like even if you argue, you still love each other, and that's the important thing. Even if you don't talk to each other, you still love them, and everything.
Mm.
And it's like, yeah, that's that is what family is. Sometimes when we don't get along, sometimes when we are angry at each other, like literally won't
Mhm.
speak to each other or whatever, and
Yeah.
yet we still love each other, and those
Mhm.
things can coexist. Um, yeah, uh, and the other thing that I want to say about it is that I am so thankful that this film, which is hailed as a Christmas classic, does not have Santa come in at the end and fix everything.
Mm.
Yeah.
Because that, I think, is what drives me nuts about so many Christmas
Yeah.
films, is that it's always the magic of Santa comes in at the end. It's some, I don't know, maybe it is, the strange old man who happened to be Santa all along and whatever. And what? You didn't see him? And then you hear ho 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 and whatever, and the sleigh flying by and whatever. It's just,
Yeah.
I hate it.
Yeah.
I hate
Yeah.
it so much.
No, I hear you, because Home Alone is an achievable kind of an idealized Christmas.
Yeah,
Mhm.
Right. And it might
yeah.
sound strange that I'm saying it's an idealized Christmas when it's like the family has abandoned their 8-year-old for Christmas. But I'm saying that's not the part that's ideal. The part that's ideal is that it it shows that it is achievable for every family, that even if you do fight, that you still care about each other and that you can still be in the same room together.
Yeah.
And it's not just the McAllisters. It is also his neighbor who has that with his own son. And that is something that's like kind of a Christmas message that actually can work in the real world. That maybe at this time of year, if you've got an estranged family member, call them up and just say, hey, just thinking about you. I love you, even if like we don't always like get along or see eye to eye or whatever, right?
Mhm.
That that is I think something that a lot of people can look at and say, right, yeah, that is the one time of the year where you're going to have the highest rate of success in reaching out to an estranged family member.
Yeah.
And so the film does such a good job of that. uh, yeah, so I think it works in a lot of ways because of that, and that it
Mhm.
because it doesn't end in that way with this Santa ex machina,
Yeah.
like just comes down from the North Pole and
Yeah.
solves everything. And yeah, that magic of Christmas with the magic of the season, I really have no tolerance for that either.
Yeah.
I
I
know.
yeah. I don't really
Oh,
like that either. It's just like I don't know. I don't know. I just like the simple
especially
ones where
when
it's like
so many of these films are trying to be like, yes, this is the real world and these are, real
yeah.
Yes.
people. And then
Yeah.
it's just all of a sudden there's magic of Santa and everything, and it's just like, well, you just completely undid the entire
Yeah.
thing. Like,
Right.
Mhm.
I have no patience for it.
Yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah. I hear you.
And that's
Um,
why Home Alone, like, it could easily, and I mean, it was produced by John Hughes,
yeah.
and directed by Chris Columbus. So it's easy to see why it is as beloved as it is. But I think that, yeah, a lot of people get too bogged down with all the, oh yeah, he sets all these traps and everything. It's like, well, that's only really for about 20 minutes of the movie. And the
Right.
Yeah.
rest of it is not about that at all. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great point. That is a great point. And I mean, I've heard I don't know, Tyler, if you've watched the pitch meeting version of it. Not that that's the be all and end all of like film criticism, but in the pitch meeting version for Home Alone, then the interaction that the producer and screenwriter have essentially says, that it's just a complete coincidence that it's set at Christmas and that really has nothing to do with anything. This film would
Yeah.
work just as well if it was, just a regular, like a spring break vacation or something like that, which
Mhm.
is just
Yeah.
complete nonsense. Like, it does work as a Christmas film because of this idea of recognizing the importance of
Yeah.
family at that certain
Yeah.
time of year, and then with the neighbor who's estranged from his son, and that is the best time of year to reach out to an estranged family member, and that is really, like, for most families, that is the tradition. It is the importance of family, and
Mhm.
so to me, it wouldn't really work as well if it was set at any other time of year.
Yeah,
It certainly wouldn't work as well. I think that it would work, but
Yeah, I'm not saying that it wouldn't work. I'm saying it wouldn't work as well.
Yeah.
That
yeah,
yeah.
Agreed.
yeah, I agree. I think that's the case for that and It's a Wonderful Life, and
Mm.
to some degree, Die Hard. um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I think that they all they would be good if they weren't associated with Christmas, but I think they're better when you associate it with Christmas because of what Christmas kind of now stands for.
Hmm.
And so, I don't know. I think that it helps with the movies and making them feel more Christmas.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. So, and I did want to say this with, yeah, just ignore my phone ringing, but I wanted to say this with both It's a Wonderful Life and with Home Alone, that um, like Home Alone, it was difficult. I was just looking into a little bit of the production history with it, but they had trouble actually getting it produced, which is surprising.
Mm.
That like, I'm not sure whether it was Christopher Columbus or John Hughes. I don't know who it was who was having. I can't remember exactly, but they had trouble with the one studio, so then they ended up going with 20th Century Fox. I forget who they were first going with because they felt they initially only had a budget of like $10 million for the film.
Mm.
Let me see if I can actually find the section here. Yeah, it was supposed to be a Warner Brothers production, and then it was John Hughes who he promised the studio he could make the movie for no more than 10 million. But then Warner Brothers was very concerned that it would inflate to maybe 14 million, and so then he ended up covertly, and it seems like it was very like this was kind of a quasi legal thing to do. Someone slipped the script to 20th Century Fox, who then went with it, and then it ultimately ended up costing something like 18 million to produce. But it's so this is what I'm trying to say is like we think now about Home Alone, it, like the way the role that it has in people's minds when it comes to its significance and it being such a classic Christmas film. Like we take it as a given of course Home Alone was going to be crazy popular, but it was not a given from the beginning.
Mhm.
And so it ended up making something like 476 million at the box office. Like
Yeah.
look at that margin, that profit margin on that,
Yeah.
18 million to produce and 476 million at the box office. And that's in 1990. That's not even adjusted for inflation as far as I can tell.
Mhm.
So I mean, like that's a staggering amount of money. But it's kind of
Yeah.
surprising, and this is where like I kind of do get periodically frustrated with Hollywood producers and executives because it just seems like they genuinely don't know how to identify good.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like they just don't even know it when it's staring them in the face.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And so then people who kind of push back against this being a Christmas film, then I still look at this and I'm like, how did you struggle to see it? How did you struggle to see
Yeah.
that this would be beloved by generations of people? Because we're now going on almost 30 years, like 29 years of this film being out. So you're getting into a lot of different, groups of children who
Mhm.
have kind of watched this at a young age and now love it and are now showing it to their children. And it's, it's, I don't think it's going anywhere.
Right.
Yeah.
So, all right. So my film is Die Hard. Now, this is what I was saying before we started recording that I want to, potentially make this into a tradition where we do this around Christmas next year and, potentially years after that. Because I've got certain films that I do really enjoy watching at this time of year, but I've got really out there ones. And so in part because I like, as we've already said, like I'm not much of a Christmas person, but I think that this is when Christmas films don't actually represent the actual meaning of Christmas, that they've taken on their own meaning, then my point is, then who then gets to define what constitutes something being a Christmas film or not? Because, It's a Wonderful Life. It's like, ooh, like I'm going to kill myself on Christmas. Oh, maybe life actually has meaning. Okay, well, that's not actually like, the Christmas story,
Yeah.
like the Christmas story of Christ. And it's like with Home Alone, it's like, I don't think that, like, aside from like a scene in a church, I don't know if they even say the name Jesus in the movie.
Yeah, I don't think that they do.
So the name of Jesus doesn't even come up in what is supposed to be a classic Christmas film, right?
Yeah.
Like, certainly they're saying Christmas in the film, like Christ, but I don't know how much that counts. And so, anyway.
Oh, your mic is having a problem.
All right, how about now?
All right, it's all
Yeah,
good.
you're good.
I really like.
Oh,
Okay, I think it was starting to work again.
Is it not working?
Okay,
you're
it
good now.
looks like it's good now.
Okay. I really like Die Hard as a Christmas film for a variety of reasons. I'm going to give a couple shout outs after this, and maybe like there'll be like some films that we'll talk about next year, because I've got a couple others that I do enjoy watching at this time of year. But one reason why I like Die Hard as a Christmas film is that, for one thing, it is set at Christmas time. And you do have like Ode to Joy playing, and you've got the Christmas iconography in the film. You have John McClane at the beginning of it, and he's traveling, right? And a lot of people are traveling at Christmas time. He's traveling to go and be with his family. And then, he and his wife are to some degree estranged. They've been separated for 6 months at the beginning of the film. And it's only through this awful exertion that he has to go through to literally save her life and save the lives of like 30 something hostages, where there was that she ultimately kind of comes back to him. There's this other guy in the workplace who is definitely going after her, and she doesn't seem to be really listening to his advances, but still, you've got this threatening guy who's coming in trying to steal away John McClane's wife at Christmas time at the Christmas party in Nakatomi Plaza, which is like the big building that they're in. And she even goes with her maiden name. When he gets there, he tries to find her, so he punches it into the computer in the lobby of the building. So he's typing in McClane and it doesn't pop up, and then he doesn't even know that his wife, for the last however many months, but approximately 6 months, has just been going with her maiden name. She calls herself Ms. Gennaro, not even, Mrs. Gennaro, or Mrs. Gennaro McClane. She goes with her Ms. as if she is like, her marital status is not important, and using her maiden name. And it's by the end of the film, then, he introduces her to the police officer who's out there on the ground level, kind of helping him throughout the film, to Al Powell. He says, "This is my wife, Holly Gennaro." And then she's like, McClane, Holly McClane. And she takes back her married name, right? At Christmas time, that they've come together, but it's not a cheap, gimmicky come together. She appreciates, because basically what she says at one point in the film, which to me works so well as it being this, like, similar to Home Alone, of kind of this estranged family that comes together at Christmas time, but I think it in a lot of ways works better. It's better earned than what you get in Home Alone, because John McClane is just like killing these, they think they're terrorists, but they're really just thieves who are trying to steal all of this money from the safe at Nakatomi Plaza. And Alan Rickman, who plays Hans Gruber, he is in charge of this group. He's the leader. He's just losing it at one point, and then John McClane's wife, Holly, sees that, and she's like, "It's John. It's got to be him. Only he can drive a person that crazy." Right? And that she has learned that from being married to him and having children with him. And there's kind of this, like, it rekindles this love for him of, yeah, he's not perfect, and he definitely will drive you nuts, but that's him, right? That it's not even necessarily trying to change him. It's saying, he's not perfect, but he's still my husband, and I still really love him. And it's out of that, of seeing how other people respond to him, that she realizes how much she cares for him. And he certainly comes around to her as well. Then when he thinks that he's going to die and he's not going to make it out of there, then he's asking Al Powell on the ground to pass on a message to his wife. And he says, tell her I'm sorry. Tell her I'm sorry for all these different things. I didn't support her in her career when things started turning around for her. And he's like, I told her I love you. I forget what he says, but like, I said I love you thousands of times in our marriage, but I never said I'm sorry. Tell her I'm sorry. Like, as a Christmas message, not just to say I love you, but to say, well, that's cheap. That's easy to do. But instead to say, I'm sorry. And when he really has no reason to try to do this, because it doesn't even seem like they're necessarily going to be able to reconcile. Like, tell me this isn't a Christmas story, right?
Yeah.
And in a lot of ways, he's fighting to save the life of his wife, and it's like, whoa, okay, that the emphasis on family. But you've also got, as far as the setting, it's in LA, it's in Southern California, so it doesn't look like traditional Christmas. But our idea of Christmas, the imagery that we associate with Christmas, is such a Hollywood construction that most of the world is still pretty green around Christmas time.
Yeah.
Or it's, pretty like it's like a desert conditions, it's whatever else. But the idea of snow at Christmas time is really a very, very small part of the world. It's really just the upper part of the northern hemisphere, right? In northern US, Canada, northern Europe, and then across Russia. But that's basically it. So for most of the world, what Hollywood says, this is what the idealized version of Christmas is, then most of the world's like, but it doesn't look like that here. Does that mean that we're having less of a Christmas experience? And I like the fact that Die Hard is saying, like, no, of course it's still Christmas, even if it doesn't look like Christmas. And I like that this film that doesn't look like a Christmas film is such a Christmas film. And so to me, that really works. And the last thing that I really wanted to say is, and this is, I'm being a little bit more facetious with this, but you've got Sergeant Al Powell, who's, he plays Carl Winslow from Family Matters. And so he's on the ground and he's helping Bruce Willis's character, John McClane, this whole time, like by communicating with him. And then John McClane is asking him, he's saying like, hey, like, you're obviously a good cop. Like, why is it that you've been behind a desk for all of these years? Like, you're saying that you're not on the street. Like, what's wrong? Like, because he says, what, do you have flat feet? Like, is there something physically wrong with you? And then he ultimately confesses that what happened was he shot a kid, shot and killed a child early on in his career because he had some kind of like toy gun and it was dark and he couldn't tell. And so he made a mistake. And then he says, they teach you all of these different things in, the academy, but they never teach you how to live with a mistake. And then by the end of the film, then you have this character that you're sure is dead, and he's not actually dead, and he like trains his gun on John McClane and Holly, and that he's gonna like kill them. And you're like, oh my goodness, after everything, then he's still gonna die. And then of course, then you've got Al Powell who just blows the guy away, and it's like, oh, he learned to shoot again at Christmas time. Aw, he learned to kill again. Like, what a beautiful Christmas story. Like I say, I'm being a little bit more facetious, but it is kind of true that it's like, hey, he got that killer instinct back, that when he needs to also pull the trigger. It's a Christmas miracle.
Yeah. I can't speak to it too much, but based on what because shout at me all you want in the comments. I have not seen Die Hard. But yeah, so I can't say based off of my experience with the film, but based on what you've said, then yeah, no, that is really, really great because it does, it achieves the spirit, if you will, of Christmas.
Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, that's great.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like, I do think it's a Christmas movie, and I don't know. I think it works really well as a Christmas movie, and I don't know. Like, I don't really get why people don't really like it as a Christmas movie, because I'm like, I mean,
because people
if you
have a
if you
certain
prefer
vision.
other Christmas movies, then like that's fine. But like, it's still a Christmas movie though, because like, well, basically of all the reasons you said, and like, so I get why people don't associate it with Christmas, but like, I don't. I feel like you can't really just be like, well, no, it's not a Christmas movie. Like, I mean, if you have that argument and you have like good points as to why, then like I'm gonna listen and hear what those are. But like, I feel
Yeah.
like it is a Christmas movie, and like whether you accept it as one or not, it still is a Christmas movie. So like,
Yeah, one of the stupidest definitions of a Christmas movie that I've ever heard is, uh, well, would you watch it at any other time of year? Then it's not a Christmas movie,
That's
or whatever.
nonsense.
I know. I'm like, that
yeah,
doesn't make any sense. Like, I would watch any three of the like any of these three films at any time of the year,
Yeah.
and yeah, like if
yeah.
I prefer to watch it at this time of the year, then that's one thing. But like,
Mm.
it's just so stupid to think that like, oh well, a Christmas movie is one that only makes sense at Christmas. Well, no,
Right.
it's
Yeah, that's
ridiculous.
yeah.
Yeah. Um, okay, so I want to briefly give a couple shout outs to some other films that I do really like watching at this time of year. And I want to know if you guys have got a couple others, and maybe like it'll be a little bit of a teaser for a year from now. Like, just
Mhm.
wait, folks. A year from now, we might talk about these other ones. But there's a couple. So I know that it's in theaters right now, which is the remake of Black Christmas. I have not seen the remake, but the original Black Christmas is an amazing horror film. It is so good. So anyway, Black Christmas is a really good one. There's a lot of classic moments in that film, and it does not get enough respect in the horror community, and certainly outside. I mean, like within the horror community to some degree, but it's not lifted up as being this excellent film. But that one, obviously, because it does take place at Christmas, but I like the spin on it of being it's a Black Christmas because it's pretty dark. And then the other one is I think it's the Scream Network in Canada would every Christmas. I don't know if they continue to do this, but for a number of Christmases, and I really enjoyed this, they would show all of the Damien films, like the Omen films, the Antichrist at Christmas time, and I frequently watched those around Christmas time. And so, anyway, that's kind of a fun little like not Christmas movies that
Right.
are fun to enjoy. But I guess I'm saying, like, because my defense of this is, hey, at a time of year when people associate all of these Christmas movies, like all these things as being Christmas movies, but they don't even mention the name of Jesus or Christ Mass or anything to do with Christian theology, but they get to say, hey, that counts as a Christian film because the most important thing about the birth of Christ is loving your family, but don't even talk about Jesus. Then I'm like, I don't see how that's more of a Christmas film than, something like
Yeah.
Die Hard or,
Yeah.
Black Christmas or whatever else.
Yeah, not to get too bogged down into religious or whatever holiday feelings, but yeah, personally, then like I see Christmas as being uh, you know such a secular thing that like I just don't even I don't know I mean, if you look at it historically, like, December 25th was not Jesus's birthday.
Right.
And yeah, it's all just like taking pagan traditions in order to, you know, I guess, for lack of a better word, indoctrinate people into the
Yes.
Christian faith. And yeah, so I think that one of the things that I like about, Home Alone or any of these other films is that it is just taking, as we've sort of discussed, it's just taking the modern or at the time modern um, uh, traditions and spirit of
Mhm.
the holiday season and
Yes.
Yeah.
implementing that into a film.
Yes.
Um, yeah,
Mhm.
so yeah, it's really interesting, and I cannot say enough how much I hate the idea of Santa Claus appearing at the end in what would otherwise be a very, realistic film. and then just magic of Christmas, everything is solved.
Can you think of a good example
Yeah.
of that? I know that I've seen it, but is there like one film in particular that you're thinking of?
Oh man, I can't off the top of my head because I think I just block them out so
Yeah,
much.
no, I get it.
Yeah. Um,
Luke, do you have any shout outs that you wanted to give to like other
um,
films?
Not really. I just like to watch like at this time usually like I don't know, just feel good movies that are gonna like make me feel like generally happy and just like feel kind of warm inside, which is why I love It's a Wonderful Life so much because it's just like, like you might feel bad sometimes or you might feel like things aren't going right, but like when you look at it like you like even if you weren't there, then it's like, well, I was important to like all of these different
Yeah.
things. Like even though like you might not feel like you're really that good or doing that much that's good on helping people, then like when you take a step back, you're like, oh well, almost like everything you do is actually like actually helping other people in some sort of way. So I just like to
Yeah.
watch movies that have like a good message like that and that just make you feel good. So not really anything in particular.
Okay.
Um, for me, I have to give a shout out to The Nightmare Before Christmas,
Oh,
which
yeah.
Oh,
is,
Sure.
is it a Halloween movie or a Christmas movie? It's both. I don't care, like,
Yeah.
whatever. Just
yeah.
perfect day to watch it would be November 1st. Um,
I think
yeah,
that's
and
when I watched it this year. I don't really know though.
yeah, just giving a shout out to that. Even though it does involve Santa Claus, then it's about the holiday characters and not about, you know, yeah, not trying to be about family and realistic and whatever, and then having Santa Claus appear with magic and whatever. It's, yeah, very different.
Right. Yeah, that's a good choice. That's a good shout out.
Yeah.
All right, folks. Well, feel free to comment below, and I don't know if you. There's. I feel like there's a lot of like, whoo, people can really react to that stuff in this podcast. If
I guess
if you
there
care to.
is one that I forgot to mention, which is just, of course, Star Wars: The Holiday Special, which I know is one that just everybody loves, and it's just one that everyone likes to watch at this time yearly and sit down and really enjoy a good portion of like what Christmas is all about, which is weird Wookiee traditions and
Yeah,
just ruining Star Wars.
I am so happy that Pitch Meeting just did one for
I
the Star Wars holiday special.
That's actually my only background. I had only like kind of heard about it, but like I did watch the pitch meeting for it on YouTube, which is on Screen Rant, the YouTube channel, and yeah, that thing is unbelievably bad.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
I heard how bad it was, and I guess I just did not believe people. Like I thought there was hyperbole that they were just exaggerating how bad this thing is, and nope, that
It's
looks
like,
awful.
yeah, it is really one of like the worst things ever.
Wait, Luke, have you
Like,
seen the whole thing?
yes, I have.
Oh my goodness.
How many? Okay, here's the real question: how many times have you watched it?
Once. That was it.
I tried to watch it once, but
It was
I gave up.
it might have been before I was in high school, or maybe grade 9, but I was just like, I've heard about the holiday special. I guess I'll watch it. And then I was just like, wow, well, this was terrible. And like, especially one of the things that got me was like Mark Hamill's makeup. Like, I don't know
Right.
who was doing that, but like, it
Yeah.
was very obvious and like really bad. And I'm like, wow, like this is just
What,
terrible. How did this even hit screens?
do you know, was that filmed after the accident that he had?
I'm
Because
not
I think
sure.
that it was, and that's why
Yeah,
the makeup looks so awkward, because it was filmed like
yeah,
shortly after he had that, I think it was a car accident, right?
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do think it was after, but like, man, it looks very weird.
Yeah, well, maybe that could be what we do next year: is worst Christmas movies.
That would be
Yeah.
very interesting.
So feel free to comment below, folks. Worst Christmas movies, best Christmas movies. Do these ones count as a Christmas movie? all of that stuff, and feel free to like and share and subscribe. All of that.
Yep.
All right, folks. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
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 Ignore the bell, people. We're gonna keep going. We're still ignoring it. Don't worry. I don't know what that. I think that's the fire drill. All right. We're gonna go home. Yeah. All right. We're done.